if you pass by our distillery or you're in Cooley and we're doing the mash for this, the smell in the area is the exact same as a child at home putting hot milk on cornflakes. That sweet aroma. So it just puts it into context that if you're going to make a whiskey out of a sweet cereal like corn, that sweetness is going to come through in the end product, and it does have a very distinctive sweet nose.
So seducing. Single malt. What's going on with your single malt? Or should I say single malts? Single malts,
yeah. We have a number of single malts. Our biggest selling single malt brand is the Tyrconnell brand. And Tyrconnell, this one here, is what I would describe as a good, light, everyday drinking malt whiskey. It is something that is in the world of single malts, and I see that in the world, not just in Irish whiskies, but the world of single malts. It is a good starting point to get somebody into single malt whiskies, because single malts can be very daunting for a novice. They're coming into a store or a great bar like here. I know they'll get a great experience if they were to come here, and education. But unfortunately, other places around the city, that education isn't there. So they might go into a place and say, I want to try a single malt. And somebody who is maybe not educated will say, well, I've heard Ardbeg is good, try that. Well, you don't particularly want a novice starting off there. Tyrconnell is the perfect starting off whiskey. It's a single malt, it is double distilled, 100% malted barley, made the exact same way as 99% of all Scotch. Now, there's no peat in it whatsoever. So it's lighter, it's softer, it's sweeter, there's a lot of fruit, it's very easy drinking whiskey.
When you say double distilled, it's because within the same facility you have
pot stills.
Pot stills.
Yes.
How big are they?
Our pot stills are 14,000 litres, so they're not huge. They're not huge, and we've two, and the second one is the exact same size. But what is unique about them is they're quite short and stumpy, with quite a narrow neck. So the neck doesn't go up too far. The neck probably in total is only maybe about that, you know. But with the malt, I mean, with Tyrconnell especially, because it is so light and approachable to begin with, we've started playing around with that. And come December here in New York, we're going to be launching the finishes. So these are 10-year-old Tyrconnells that have spent 10 years in bourbon barrels, and then we take them out and we finish them in either a port, Madeira or sherry cask. And they have very delicate finishes. We didn't want to overdo it.
So what are we talking about? Just a few weeks, a few months, a couple of years?
Varies from cask to cask. It depends. It's ready when it's ready. In the case of the port and the Madeira, that was between 4 to 6 months. In the case of the sherry, it was almost a year and a half. Now, why longer for one or the other? It's got to do with the cask. You know, we wouldn't release it if it wasn't right. When we thought it was right, then we'll go ahead with it. But what we were looking for was, we were looking for, the whiskey has to be the main element of the finish. I firmly believe that. If you over finish something, well, then it's more like a port with whiskey, rather than a whiskey with a delicate balance of port. So that's what we really try to achieve with those, and we have achieved it because they've won multiple awards. The Madeira finish has been named Chairman's Trophy, just about every competition it's ever gone into. Jim Murray gave it his Irish Whiskey of the Year when it was first released a few years back. You know, though there is something there for everyone. If you like sherry, you love the sherry finish. If you like port, you love the port finish, etc., etc. You know, so you know, we're always playing with our whiskies, our liquids, and that is the biggest difference between Cooley and some of the other established brands. We are not afraid to innovate, to try different things, to experiment. With Tyrconnell at the moment, we're now looking at maybe a rum finish. And it's unusual rum. It's a Barbados rum, and there's an Irish background to it. It's from the 18th century, and Irish slaves were used in the production. Irish slaves were in Barbados, believe it or not, and they were used making the facility and producing the rum. You know, so it's so we're always looking for a little link.
So we're talking about barrels that were probably in Kentucky first, then to Barbados, and
yeah, and now we've got them. That's specific to Ireland is the blanket bogs, so it is quite it's not very thick, if you know what I mean. It only goes down maybe a few meters into the ground, so it is a finite resource, and it is running out. Now, unfortunately, like anything, with amalgamations, there's only now the one malting company in Ireland. And we don't do our malting ourselves, we outsource our malting. So the Malt Company of Ireland used to produce the unmalted barley, or sorry, the unpeated malt that we use for Tyrconnell, and they still do that. They also used to provide some peated malt for us for Connemara. But now we have to get our peated malt from Scotland.
All right.
So we're essentially using the same peated malt as the majority of Scottish distilleries. Now,
yet it's quite different. I mean,
yes.
when we drink Connemara, obviously it's a completely different whiskey.
Yeah.
You're not having an Islay
No.
Scotch whiskey there.
No.
So why is that so different?
It's firstly, the amount of peat being used is actually quite light. It's only 14 parts per million, as opposed to an Islay, which is 35 plus. So that's the first thing. Secondly, it's an Irish whiskey. It's not a Scotch whiskey. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, it's made in Ireland. It's matured in Ireland. The Irish climate is very different to the climate in Scotland, very different to the climate in Kentucky, obviously, very different to many climates all over the world. The Irish climate is temperate. There are no extremes. There are no extreme winters, there are no extreme summers. It is kind of like a constant temperature, a constant temperate environment all year round. Whiskey in a cask is a living, breathing thing. It is affected by climatic change. It is affected by changes in temperature. It will expand or contract depending on those temperature changes. With less of that happening, the whiskey is maturing that bit more mellower. Bog oak, I am very excited about. What we've done with that is we've taken our standard bourbon barrels, we've taken out the staves of it, and we've reconstructed it using ends that have been made from bog oak. Now, bog oak is Irish oak wood that has been preserved in the bogs of Ireland for over 5,000 years. So it's 5,000-year-old wood. We've been able to manage to build the ends out of this for, I think, 3 barrels. I think is what we've done initially, and we have filled it through some of that heavily peated malt that we had remaining. So some of the heavily peated 54 ppm liquid, which is now 4 years of age, that's been put into it, and it's been left to mature. And we've also added in some of the 18-year-old as well. Some 18-year-old Connemara as well has gone into it. And what it has given the whiskey is this amazing earthy peatiness. It's peaty to begin with because of the amount of phenols in it, but there's an earthiness. There's also a flavour that I get out of it, which is, as a kid, one of my favourite candy bars in Ireland was something called a Smiley bar. A Smiley bar was a small little orange caramel bar that was covered in chocolate. And it's been off the market for I don't know how long, probably since I stopped eating at age 12 or something. But anyway, which is only obviously a few years ago.
Yeah.
So when I first tasted the bog oak, that's the flavour I got. I got this amazing orange caramel flavour coming through it. And I asked Alex Chasko, our innovation guy, I said, how the hell is this flavour coming from the whiskey? And he says it's due to the bog oak. There's something in the bog oak making that flavour.
But number one, you must be the only ones in the world doing this. Number two, how do you come across some oak that's been preserved just like that, and I guess chunky enough that you can get heads out of that?
Yeah, there's quite a lot of it available in Ireland because, as I said,
you can probably find more bodies preserved in peat than large trunks of oak.
Yeah, but when you have a country like Ireland where 1/6 of the landmass is peat, that's a lot of area to go looking for. And there is quite a lot of bog oak in Ireland. It is often used for golf prizes and things like that, for special occasion mementos. It's something very, very special. So we just said, hey, it's intrinsic to Ireland. It's traditional. Nobody else can do this using Irish bog oak. So let's do it. And that's kind of that's the mentality of Cooley Distillery. We're not afraid to try different things. We're not afraid to innovate. When we came out with just standard peated malt, we were told, you can't do that. That's not Irish. We said, well, it is. It's traditional. It's more traditional than any other brand that's out there.
Is there anybody in Ireland that goes over what you can do and what you cannot do?
It is covered by an Irish Whiskey Act. It has to be distilled from a diastase-based cereal. It doesn't specify how many times distilled, just has to be distilled from an Irish diastase, or in Ireland, of a diastase-based cereal. It has to mature for a minimum of 3 years on the island of Ireland.
All right.
That's pretty much it.
All right, so then you can do many things with that. Anything that your spirit of innovation has led you to do that was not that great, that we never saw because it was not released?
Not yet, but it might happen. At the moment, I'll be straight up and honest, we're struggling a little bit with rye. We're playing around with rye, and we're just struggling to get the mash bill right. But we're doing that in Kilbeggan. Kilbeggan, it's only 1.5 thousand litre pot stills. So tiny little pot stills. So if it doesn't work, it's no big loss. Okay. So that's where we're doing a lot of our innovation.
Would that be 100% malted rye?
No, that's what we're playing around with at the moment. Right. We haven't fully got something yet.
You understand that you won't get more out of that?
No.
And maybe a year from now, all of a sudden, there'll be a rye.
A rye from Ireland. But that's one of the ideas, I suppose. It hasn't quite worked yet, but we're going to keep at it until it does work. But again, the spirit of innovation. In Kilbeggan, in this beautiful new distillery that is built to reflect a distillery of the 1840s, with wooden washbacks, wooden fermentation vessels. The oldest pot still in the world, still in use, from the 1840s. All this just to reflect old small distilleries of the day in Ireland. In the heyday of Irish whiskey, we decided we would do a single pot still, a pure pot still style whiskey, but not just like the brands that are out there from Ireland that are just malted barley and unmalted barley. We wanted the original mash bill from the 1840s that was being made in the Kilbeggan distillery that contained oats. So it's oats, malted barley and unmalted barley. That will be available in a good few years' time, but it's just gone to sleep now, and it's sleeping in our warehouses, and when it's ready, that'll be released.
Yeah, we'll wait, I guess.
I can't wait for that. I've had some of the distillate, and it's just stunning, absolutely stunning, and I can't wait for it to mature.
Well, I must say that we all get that feeling that Irish whiskey is on the rise. What's your take back in Ireland? Yeah. How's the world of Irish whiskey consumption?
It's good. There is one thing, however. If you take domestically in Ireland, I always say for a whiskey producing country, we are not a whiskey drinking nation. We don't drink whiskey like you see over here, like you see in France, like you see in Germany. Whiskey in Ireland has always had a bit of a hang up. It was the drink of the old man at the bar with a bottle of Guinness and a whiskey. How many times have I been in a taxi in Dublin, and taxi men are the same all over the world. They want to hear everything. So what do? I work in the whiskey business. Oh, madman's drink, I wouldn't touch it, So you're fighting a battle in Ireland,
It's probably good to know that it's coming from a taxi driver.
Yeah, exactly. But you can discount straight away.
Irishmen out there, you should get on Irish whiskey quite a bit.
But we are seeing the change. The change is being led here in the US, where Irish whiskey has become a young, a trendy drink again.
Of course.
I have a theory on it. I call it the Capri Sun generation. These are kids who've grown up, kids from their 20s up to their mid-30s, okay? Their parents were the first generation really with disposable income and were able to buy sugary drinks for their kids, okay? So as those kids grew up, they had this sugary taste in their mouth, this sweet drink. So as they turned to alcohol, they were looking for a similar sweet style. Bourbon sales have boomed in the past 10 years. Irish whiskey has boomed. Scotch has started going the other direction because of a generational thing, but also it is not sweet like the other two styles.
That's an interesting theory.
The other theory I have is, I love theories, is I also link it in, certainly the Irish thing, is I call it the Bono effect. Since the 1980s, since U2 became the biggest rock band in the world, people see U2, they listen to the music and go, oh, it's Irish. Irish is kind of cool, isn't it? What else is out there? Well, then there's been Riverdance, there's been Irish film stars, there's been different Irish bands breaking through. Then you all of a sudden had the surge of Irish pubs, especially in Europe, where it wasn't traditional as it was here in the United States. But every major city in Europe now has a number of Irish pubs, and that's where everybody wants to go for a bit of we call the bit of crack, a bit of fun, a bit of enjoyment.